Hello, everyone. In this lecture, we begin exploring the theoretical foundations of LGBTQ plus studies through an overview of queer theory and its development over the past several decades. Queer theory does not emerge from a single moment or individual scholar. Instead, it developed gradually through conversations among activists, scholars, and communities, responding to changing social and political conditions. The chapter emphasizes that intellectual fields evolve over time, building upon earlier movements while also challenging them. Queer theory is closely connected to queer activism. Both emerged from historical struggles surrounding gender and sexuality, particularly during the late 20th century. Activists and scholars sought not only recognition for LGBTQ plus people, but also new ways of thinking about identity, politics, and social institutions. Rather than simply requesting inclusion within existing systems, queer theory often questions the assumptions underlying those systems. Before queer theory, academic work on sexuality largely appeared under the label of gay and lesbian studies. This earlier scholarship focused on recovering histories, representing marginalized communities, and affirming sexual identities that had long been stigmatized or erased. While this work was essential, queer theory introduced a different approach. Instead of treating identities as stable categories, queer theory examines how identities themselves are socially produced. A central idea in queer theory is that gender and sexuality are socially constructed. This means that understandings of masculinity, femininity, and sexual identity develop within specific cultural and historical contexts rather than existing as universal or timeless truths. Scholars influenced by this perspective examine how institutions such as medicine, law, science, and education shape definitions of normal and abnormal sexuality. The chapter highlights the influence of key thinkers whose work helped reshape understandings of gender and sexuality. Drawing on Michel Foucault's analysis of sexuality, queer theorists argue that power does not simply repress sexual expression. Instead, power produces categories of identity through systems of knowledge and discourse. The naming and classification of sexual identities therefore becomes part of broader social regulation. Queer theory also challenges assumptions about heterosexuality. Rather than viewing heterosexuality as natural or inevitable, scholars demonstrate that it too has a history and is shaped by social expectations. By questioning what is considered normal, queer theory exposes how norms operate to privilege some identities while marginalizing others. Another major development discussed in the chapter is the relationship between queer theory and feminist thought. Scholars such as Judith Butler contributed the concept of gender performativity, which suggests that gender appears stable because it is repeatedly enacted through everyday behaviors and social expectations. Gender, in this view, is not simply something one is, but something produced through ongoing social practices. The chapter also examines how queer theory expanded to address intersections among gender, sexuality, race, class, and ability. Over time, scholars increasingly recognize that experiences of sexuality cannot be separated from other forms of social inequality. This intersectional approach broadened the scope of LGBTQ plus studies and challenged earlier movements that centered limited experiences. As queer theory developed, it also generated internal debates. Some scholars questioned whether movements focused on legal inclusion, such as marriage equality, risked reinforcing existing social norms rather than transforming them. Concepts such as heteronormativity and homonormativity emerged to describe how expectations about respectability and normality continue to shape LGBTQ plus politics and representation. Ultimately, this chapter presents queer theory as an ongoing and evolving field rather than a finished framework. Queer theory encourages critical reflection on how categories of identity are formed, how power operates through social norms, and how knowledge itself participates in shaping social life. Understanding queer theory provides a foundation for the rest of this course. It offers tools for analyzing gender and sexuality not as isolated topics, but as central components of culture, politics, and everyday experience. As we continue through the semester, we will return to these theoretical ideas repeatedly, applying them to historical developments, global perspectives, and contemporary social issues.